evening, and welcome to the August 14th Eugene Planning Commission meeting. My name is John Borowski. I'm the chair of the Planning Commission for right now. Planning Commission reserves 10 minutes at the beginning of each meeting for public comment. Is there anybody here who would like to comment to the Planning Commission? Seeing none, we can move on to action item, Planning Commission elections. So we normally do elections the first meeting after people get after the new people get seated, or in early August. This year we have a little bit of a little hiccup because normally the way things work is we have a chair and a vice chair, or a chair and a co-chair, and usually the co-chair moves in. Well, Bree Nicolella was our co-chair, so we've been without a co-chair for the last 3.5, 4 months or so, and we decided rather than filling that position, we would wait and just move on. So with that being said, the normal progression line has kind of been thrown a little bit askew. One of the other things that we normally do would be the chair would contact all of you and see who and if anybody is interested in doing that. That didn't happen. Yeah, I talked to Robin last week about that, and we just figured we would punt and go with it at this meeting. So basically what we're looking for at this meeting is a chair and a co-chair. We'll take nominations and then, or vice chair, sorry, yeah. Different committees have different things. Vice chair is the terminology that we're looking for. Chair and vice chair. The chair obviously is doing what I'm doing right here, runs the meeting and is kind of a liaison. Vice chair takes the gavel when the chair is unavailable to do it or for some reason can't be here. So with that, we will kind of put out and see if anybody's interested. I told Robin that I would do another year of chair if that was, you know, if nobody else wanted to step up and do it. But I am more than willing to sit at the back bench as well. So with that, I'm just going to open it up for discussion and see what the commission feels at this point.
And is this specific to chair right now? You're just wanting to know?
Yeah, let's talk about the chair position first. Do you want to say anything?
No, well, maybe just a brief comment. I think everything I wanted to cover, I put in the email. And, you know, there's no requirement to have experience as chair. It's helpful, certainly from a staff standpoint, when we get into some of the quasi-judicial proceedings, especially. But that said, you know, I think anybody can declare interest and you all can vote and decide what you want to do.
Well, that.
I will say that my personal opinion is that I feel that those of you who have been on the Planning Commission for a little bit longer, you know, maybe have a little bit, you know, I mean, I guess I would defer to anyone who has.
Commissioner Baker.
I think I'm the only current member that hasn't been chair, so I would volunteer it's just for a year, right, to next year. Mm-hmm. Which is when our terms expire.
Right, right. Anybody else interested or want to make a nomination?
Did Kristen express interest?
I haven't heard from Kristen. Again, I didn't reach out. I was hoping that she would be here. Both Kristen, myself, and Bill have all been chair at one point in the past tenure. So
I was chair 2 years in a row.
You were?
I was.
Oh.
I was vice chair and then chair 2 years in a row. So I will defer to those who have had that opportunity.
By the way, I just wanted to throw this in here. I got a text from Kristen, says that she'll be about 20 minutes late. So roughly 15 minutes from now, she should arrive. So
all right.
FYI on that.
Okay. Do we want to wait for Kristen? Okay,
We can just postpone it and move it. Do
we
something.
can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're ready to go with the other agenda item if you guys want to
Okay,
push
so,
that.
I would feel more comfortable
see
to
what
wait
her
for her.
interest is.
Yeah, because I think it's a pretty big.
okay. So we'll push those two items back, items B and C, which are the liaisons to the subcommittees. And we'll put our work session on the Clear Lake developmental strategies up.
Sounds good.
All right?
You ready? You guys ready? All right.
Get us all set up here. Thank you, commissioners. I'd first like to introduce you to Chad Kramer. He is an urban designer that joined our staff in December, and he is leading the work on this project. So I'm going to provide you with kind of the background on how we got to where we are, and then let him take over the next steps from here. I'm really happy to be talking about development readiness for Clear Lake. Even saying that feels like it's been a long time coming. For many years, this was a goal in our community to get to the place where we would have room for business expansion and job growth in our community. And to be moving that vision toward reality is pretty exciting. So as I already said, I'm going to provide the background, and then Chad will move into our upcoming work. So the Clear Lake area, and I will show a map in just a moment, is a recently adopted expansion area of Eugene's urban growth boundary. And it was added to accommodate jobs, parks, and a school site in the Bethel neighborhood. And because Eugene is the regional economic hub, we're forecasting quite a few jobs over the 20-year planning horizon to be added to the city. Our estimate is 37,000, so even more than the number of, or close to the number of people that we're adding over that 20-year planning horizon. About 3,000 of those jobs, in the next slide, are estimated to be going in this area, and they would be more industrial, light industrial, and kind of office commercial type jobs. And again, we'll get into some of the detail a little bit later. The area is pretty big. It's 924 acres in total, and it includes large employment sites over 10 acres in size, some kind of remnant smaller industrial sites as well. The Bethel School site, which is a little over 50 acres, and Golden Gardens Park, which is very large, over 200 acres. Of that 924, 276, or about a third, are a combination of wetlands, riparian corridors, and open water areas. So since we began looking at this area for development, we knew dealing with water would be a really big challenge. We, as a city, want to work with the landscape and the existing topography, clean the water, and use it as a recreational amenity, for example, in the park and school areas, and a workplace amenity in the employment area, as many businesses in West Eugene have successfully demonstrated can be done. We'll show you that too. So a little bit of policy background. And this text is really small on my notes, so hold on. The Clear Lake area has been talked about and planned for a number of years, dating back to the Envision Eugene recommendation, which is from 2012. And then planning work continued on through the adoption of our Envision Eugene comprehensive plan, which happened last summer in 2017 with the adoption of the urban growth boundary. And within that package, the comprehensive plan included a chapter on economic development specifically. And there are economic development policies that outline the aspirations of the community, specifically related to this area, including policies on industry clusters, food and beverage manufacturing specifically, site preparedness, and a number of other policies that have been adopted by the City Council. In addition to the comprehensive plan, the Clear Lake area includes an overlay zone that was specifically written for it. And we pulled together a multidisciplinary committee that included 2 planning commissioners, a sustainability commissioner, human rights commissioner, Lane Regional Air Protection. I'm sorry, they weren't on the committee, but we coordinated with them. active Bethel citizens, and Beyond Toxics were on the committee. And what those folks did was help us deploy the triple bottom line of sustainability framework in our thinking about how to write regulations for this area. And the overlay has two main goals. The first is to protect the largeness of the sites for industrial or commercial industrial development. So there's a prohibition against further subdividing those large lots written into the code. And the second goal is to address environmental justice. And there are a number of uses that are prohibited in this overlay area to protect environmental health of surrounding neighborhoods, which are already exposed to a lot of industrial pollutants just by virtue of being near the airport and the two major industrial areas of Eugene. So the Clear Lake overlay is in place, and another tool that we applied was the water quality overlay zone, and that's one that was already on the books in our code, and we placed that over some of the waterways in the area, the major waterways in the area, to protect both capacity for dealing with water, stormwater, and also environmental quality. There are additionally unique stormwater standards in this area that were developed because this water flows into canals owned by the Junction City Water Irrigation District or Water Control District. So there's some unique kind of partnerships that we worked through in order to get that done. Okay, next one. Looking forward, here's an aerial map of the Clear Lake area. Although we finished the UGB expansion, and that was the first step in getting this area ready for development, there still is a lot of work remaining to do. Until we had this land, Eugene really did not have large industrial parcels in its inventory, or the very few that we did have were pretty constrained. And businesses that had a need to expand or wanted to locate in the area had to look outside of Eugene. Salem, some went to Albany or Coburg even, Junction City. A couple of local examples include grain millers and Rexius. So now that we have this land, we have some work to do to get it ready for development. And just highlighting a couple of the goals of the Clear Lake Development Strategy, which is the project from this point forward. The goals include facilitating private development of these employment lands by addressing barriers to development, determining a logical sequence for providing key urban services and infrastructure, and really defining our city's approach to addressing the stormwater management and wetland mitigation needs in this area. So with that, I think I'll let Chad walk you through, oh no, I have one more slide. This one is highlighting our regional economic development goals and something called targeted industries. We have a regional economic development plan for Eugene, Springfield, and Lane County, and it includes a list of targeted industries that are uniquely poised for growth and success in our region. And among those are food processing and manufacturing, software information technology services, biosciences, clean technology and renewable energy, environmental services, waste remediation, health and wellness, and specialized manufacturing. And that list is in the plan if you want to reference it. But many of these targeted industries are already represented in the area. Just to give you an idea of food businesses that are immediately adjacent to this expansion area: Nancy's Yogurt, Glory Bee, Childers Meat, Umpqua Dairy, Monster Cookie, and the list goes on. They're all right there. So there's really potential for that industry to find some synergy here and share some certain functions. Now, let me make sure that was my last one. Yes.
Thank you, Terry. Great summary of all the good work that's been done so far. So now what? How do we implement this kind of community vision on the on the heels of all the good work that's been done, right? So we're looking at to create this Clear Lake area in a way that is representative of the values of the city of Eugene as an eco-industrial corridor and as a gateway to the regional asset of the airport. So it's important to kind of keep these kind of larger goals in mind as we move forward with the economic and kind of job creation component of it, right? We don't want any to come at the cost of the other. They all need to be work in symbiosis together. So the first thing we need to do is determine and reach out with our public engagement and key stakeholders. You see a kind of a brief kind of list here. Private property owners, I mean, they own most of the land, as you saw on that map just now, right? We've already started reaching out to several of them to hear some of their concerns and understand what some of the barriers that they are perceiving that may be holding them back for development in the area. The federal and state partners, we're working with Oregon Department of State Lands and U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Now, as recommendations from the Goal 5 analysis, the city went with no local protection for the wetlands. So we're reliant now on the state and federal protections. So I'm going to be working with them throughout this process to make sure that everything's being handled according to COIL. Additionally, the Bethel School District, we've had some great conversations with them. As of now, they do not have a plan for a school there, but the land is available when that expansion, if and when that expansion is needed by them. Additionally, parks and open space, Terry mentioned that Golden Gardens Community Park, it's a 220-acre park. It's been identified as a potential location for a large industrial sports complex. Some of you may know we also have the Golden Gardens ponds, which are also a habitat for the western pond turtle. So we're working with Parks and Open Space to develop a strategy that can encourage the habitat restoration that's already there, the new use of the industrial sports complex, larger sports complex, alongside any sort of wetland mitigation components, potentially and probably more like stormwater management. Additionally, I mentioned the Eugene, or I'm sorry, community partners. Terry mentioned Lane Regional Air Protection Agency, Lane County Public Health, Junction City Water Control District, LTD, Beyond Toxics. I'm sure there's probably more we'll be talking to, but it's a good start. The Eugene Airport, we recognize that it's a regional economic asset. And it seems by and large, as it stands now, the Clear Lake area is kind of the place that you drive through to get to either the airport or get back to the city from the airport, right? I'm a big fan of placemaking. I like making places people go, right, and that are useful and beautiful and functional, and so that's what we're going to do here. And additionally, we have the utility providers. We've already started speaking with eWeb to make sure that there's no big surprises coming online and that they can actually help us serve the things that we do know are coming online. So included this graphic here just to give you a sense of scale of the wetlands that are in the area. This is from our local wetlands inventory. As Terry mentioned, it's a little less than a third of all the land there. So this is no small feat, right? I mean, this comes at great expense for anyone looking to develop any land here. So as part of this development strategy, we're going to be recommending identifying barriers and recommending paths to help developers or landowners get through these barriers, in addition to recommending infrastructure improvements that need to happen from the city's end to help bring these areas online. Now, before we can do that, we need two analyses to help us inform this kind of development strategy. The first one is the wetland mitigation assessment. We're going to be looking at more or less a parcel by parcel analysis of what it's going to take for landowners to bring that land online. Like literally, how much is it going to cost? Is this feasible, right? Is it feasible if there are utilities close? Do they have to run them by? And we're going to run through scenarios to see what all these things look like, to identify areas that we're going to see as potential problems to help see if we can relieve those barriers. Additionally, the second one there is stormwater conveyance analysis. We're part of the Willamette Valley. It's prone to, you have the wetlands here as stormwater collectors. And so we want to just make sure that as development comes online and buildings get built, industrial areas happen, that we are ready and able to be able to, have the right infrastructure in place to deal with the stormwater conveyance issues that are invariably going to come up. So we're going to have those two items running really soon. We're actually seeking, timelines and scoping documents from a couple of partners that may be able to accommodate this for us. Precedent analysis. So my background's in architecture. I don't do anything without major precedent analysis. This is how I roll. And I like to just be real clear. This is not representative of anything, anyone's project. These are simply ideas that we can look at for inspiration as ways that we can strive to hopefully find in some of the developments as they occur and move forward with. We didn't have to go far for the first one. Mountain Rose Herbs here in Eugene. Terry and I took a trip out there, talked with Sean
Daniel.
Yeah. What an amazing example they have set for other, industrial uses in Eugene, right? I mean, they top to bottom have sustainability like down pat. But one of the things that's most relevant, I think, to what we're doing here is it's just a small image of one of their stormwater catchment areas, just right outside of their loading dock, right? And this is on all sides of them, more or less. I mean, they've kind of took this really expansive approach to making this happen. So here's what we know. We know this works here. We know that we can kind of seek a balance and have a harmony between these industrial uses and the ecological functions that need to be maintained in the area, right? Second one, this is I don't know the correct pronunciation, but I think it's Menomonee Valley Industrial Center. This is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Just another example of what something might look like with industrial uses against a stormwater kind of wetland area, right, that have been changed into stormwater functions. This project was a remediation project. It converts a polluted and previously abandoned industrial area into a public park and stormwater management facility that reconnects economically distressed neighborhoods to the broader city. It facilitates economic revitalization while helping to improve ecological conditions. The new park features trails, pedestrian bridges that link the site to adjoining neighborhoods and offer residents improved access to economic and recreational opportunities. What a great example, right, for us to be looking at for some of the private developments in this area. Talking about the Golden Gardens Park, right, we're going to be looking at, again, this sports complex use alongside and in tandem with the ecological functions that are needed for the area. So this is Magnuson Park in Seattle. The local regulatory agencies there in Seattle call this park a standard for urban ecology. The park creates high-performance wetlands on what had been 12 acres of impervious concrete. They bridge the seemingly disparate recreational and ecological park uses. That's a huge kind of example for us to look at. They reuse materials and resources. They created sports fields, wetlands, and paths for exploration and education. You can see here, you have a little bit of the wetland next to the ball field there. This is Elko Sports Complex in Elko, Nevada. Includes numerous baseball fields, soccer fields, softball fields, along with other areas for recreation. Right alongside, you can see them there, kind of on the upper part of the image, alongside low wetland areas, alongside the Humboldt River up there. And this just gives another example of kind of a larger scale, recreational facility that has been able to successfully implement their kind of needs of the community alongside the ecological needs of that location in which they sit. The Willow School. This is in Washington, D.C. As I mentioned, Bethel School District does not have plans to build a school right now, but from everything I understand, they are interested in doing this kind of educational opportunities, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So just putting this out there is we're ready and willing to talk with them and partner up with them if and when they decide to move forward with any sort of capital endeavors. This is the Sidwell Friends Middle School. They embody a philosophy to educate and guide students in developing social and environmental awareness. The school extends the learning environment into the landscape with green roof, outdoor classroom, biology pond, butterfly meadow, and Washington, D.C.'s first constructed wetland. Water conservation played a central role in the project design with closed-loop wastewater system and underground cisterns that collect runoff. And generally, they incorporate this kind of ecological, prominence into their education system at the school, which is a really unique thing, I think, something that we could also be looking at, for example. And then the Los Angeles Airport Gateway. I don't suspect we'll do anything quite this intense as the Gateway there in Los Angeles, but the idea still stands. I mentioned before, we basically drive through Clear Lake to get to and from the airport. A lot of us do, like if we're coming up from 99 or the Beltline. And it's of such regional economic importance, the airport, that it would do us such benefit to kind of recognize that and create these threshold moments that act as a gateway. As one, we have 2021 coming up, we have 100,000 people coming to visit when they land, and they're going to come out. What is the first thing they see? The first thing they see is Clear Lake, right? So if we can start to get things maybe like gateway enhancements through signage or landscaping or lighting or whatever that looks like, we don't know yet. We can create these kind of gateways that and boundaries that create these transitions between the spaces, right? I mean, they delineate senses of arrival, they're an integral part of boundaries, they interface two types of activities. I mean, the functions of these kind of threshold moments and these benefits go on and on. But just another thing we're looking at doing is enhancing our friends and partners at the airport. So I think that's all I have for now, and I'm just looking forward to moving forward.
All right. Well, thank you two for the presentation. We'll open it up now for questions, comments. Yes.
So, the residents in this part of the city have a lot less access to parks and green space. And, we've got the Amazon pool on the south end of town. We've got the, kids sport, or sports complexes going in. You've got the Y over there. And it's really clear that we need this development in that part of the city. So when you're talking of putting a stadium in, are you talking about a large sports stadium that people have to pay entry to go to for entertainment? Or are you talking about like a sports complex that would be accessible to families and to young people? What do you?
It's more of the latter, although that whole process of master planning and design will be led by Parks and Open Space. Yes. Mm-hmm. So I definitely want to say that right up front. We'll be involved as partners with them. Right. Mm-hmm. But that's what they've done in the past, and Robin's led several of these efforts, so jump in if you'd like. But it's pretty intensive work with the community to get the master plan done. Right.
It would be a City of Eugene community park. You look at Amazon is a community park. There's the ball fields out in Bethel is another example. It's basically, as opposed to like a metropolitan park, which would serve everyone in the whole community, the community regional park is basically for that segment of the city. So, but yeah, the fields and all the facilities are programmed by City Rec. They're also shared and programmed with nonprofits like Kids Sports, that kind of thing. So it would be very different from like a large, sort of more corporate type stadium. It's a public resource.
Yeah, and I can just talk to that a little bit. Recently, there was a study done, and they were by the Traveling County Commission, and it showed that this area is short on fields. Soccer fields, baseball fields, those types of things. And those can be, one, they're good for the health of the community because it promotes activity. And it's also a really good economic driver. You get these softball tournaments, baseball tournaments that bring in a lot of people and bring a lot of money into the community. If you go down to Medford, there's a really big ball fields thing down there, and people drive from Northern California, from Portland all the way down there. So that was an economic engine that can be incorporated along with the parks and open space type of thing. Other questions?
I apologize if you talked about this at the beginning, and I was a part of the subcommittee for Clear Lake, but I just wanted to ask, so it sounds like with some of the assessments, and I know we talked about this preliminarily, is because I'm currently involved in a couple of projects that are wetland based and are dealing with the federal and state regulations. It can be a very cumbersome, costly process, as you know. So is the objective then for the targeted industries are we financially as a city going to actually get involved in mitigation? So if you already explained it, I can talk about this offline. But if you haven't, I'd love to have an understanding, because to entice these targeted industries to really consider these properties viable, large industrial. I know some of the images are fantastic, but at the same time, some of them, if we truly want industries, they might want to use the site to maximum capacity, and then they're involved in what that process looks like. So what are we going to do as a jurisdiction to help encourage them, other than just do a study, if at all?
Yeah, I would have two things to say and then add on. But the first thing I forgot to mention is that the city is a wetland mitigation banker. And so we've had the successful West Eugene Wetlands Mitigation Bank for a couple of decades now. And it's a very well-regarded program at the state level. So we're currently in the business of looking for a new mitigation site. We've got a business plan for extending the wetland bank that Public Works staff has prepared, and so they're looking at sites now, presently, and trying to purchase one. So there's that piece, and then the other thing I would say is that the study, what we hope to get out of it is an understanding of where that line is, where how much the property, site by site, would need to make it feasible to actually develop their site. Now, that depends on what they want to do. So we have to be a little bit theoretical or test out a couple of scenarios, but that's why we're working with the property owners, is to try to say, what do you think we should test for your site, and work with our consultant to figure out where we might actually need to devote city resources or incentives or grant funding to get a building out of the ground, because not every site will need that, but a lot of them will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can I follow up with one thing?
Mm-hmm.
It might be helpful in the stakeholder group. Let's say an owner just says, I want highest and best use.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to actually reach out to people in the community that, the chamber, who's networking with various industries, what are those trends, what is highest and best use, to understand what that potential capacity demand is for that site. Because an owner might not be able to realistically answer the question.
Great.
I put myself in the queue, and I'm gonna piggyback on that. When I went through and looked at the public involvement and key stakeholders, there were good people to have on that as stakeholders. It was Planning Commission, Sustainability Commission, Human Rights Commission, Active Bethel Neighbors, Beyond Toxic, as well as city departments, Lane County Public Health, Lane Region Air Protection Agency. I didn't see anybody there that hired people. There was no employers in the key stakeholders. And if we're looking at employment lands, a key stakeholder are employers.
Absolutely.
And so it may not, like Kristen said, one is, check with the chamber and stuff like that. But I think also if you were to check with commercial realtors and ask them, what are people looking for? Because they've got people coming to them and saying, I would like I want to put this here. It may not be, you may not go to Glory B, or you may not go to Hop Valley or whoever it is because you want a food thing. Go to somebody who's actively marketing dirt in this town and say, what are people looking for? Because that is the key stakeholder in my opinion. All these other ones are very good, but if we're looking for employment lands, I want people who are going to employ people. Second thing, on stormwater, I don't know, the stormwater strategies have advanced so much in the past 20 years that I think a lot of stormwater mitigation can be done on site. If we look at Roosevelt Middle School, they're doing almost 100% stormwater mitigation on site, yet they're still paying stormwater fees. So I think that might be an incentive for businesses, is like, okay, if you can process 90% of your stormwater on site in this area, we're going to charge you 10% of your stormwater fees for your other impervious surfaces. Because if you're not putting stormwater into the system, you shouldn't have to pay that full price, especially if we're trying to attach it. So that could be an incentive that's out there. And I also think that using Golden Gardens as a way to deal with some of our, we saw pretty pictures of open water. If that's stormwater that's coming off of a private property but is directed through Golden Gardens and is remediated that way, I think is a process that is there. And then the last thing, in your presentation, you said, and this goes back to my first point, we're going to make this thing beautiful out there. Well, we're not going to do anything. It's the people who develop it that are going to do it. And so we've got to make sure that it's possible to do, because I would hate to see this be phantom inventory land.
Absolutely.
I would hate to see in 15 years grass fields on Clear Lake Road, because that means that the industries are going to Junction, the industries are going to Cottage Grove and Veneta. So those are some of my points.
So, and I'll just add, from the first point, you're both absolutely right, and I've been talking with Joshua Monge. I had a couple meetings with him, so we're already in communication with Chamber of Commerce, but we can look and see what other sort of stakeholders for employers that we can add into that and start bringing into these conversations sooner than later. So that's that.
Thank you. Yeah. Commissioner Baker.
Yeah, just a query. A lot of this is based on being able to guarantee that we have these large lots. And I'm just wondering how defensible that is at LUBA and, with other jurisdictions. Have they been able to successfully maintain or prevent an owner from subdividing their property?
Yeah, well, as part of the urban growth boundary adoption package, we worked really closely with DLCD, the State Department of Land Conservation Development, and a variety of stakeholders to figure out what the best combination of regulations and kind of protections would be. And it ended up being both policy language in the comprehensive plan that talks about our need for large sites and the Clear Lake overlay, which is code. So there's no other way to protect against future actions by council, for example. But it is not easy. It is not easy to chop up these sites that are part of our portfolio now. And what it would require, because people have asked this question, is a new economic opportunities analysis, a new UGB study. And we will get some of that information through our monitoring program to find out if we're successfully utilizing this land that we're trying to prepare for development.
Other questions? Any questions from staff?
Well, not a question, but more of a comment about next steps. We do want to come back to you and keep you in the loop as these products come in, as we learn more. Like I said at the beginning, it's a new phase for us to bring back something that we worked on the policy end for so many years, and now we're seeing how it's going to turn into real development on the ground. And I think that's really good for us as a staff and as a planning commission to track it and get the regular updates. So we want to come back. We have a project charter we're working on. We'll bring that to you when it's done and bring you updates on the studies as they're completed.
I have one more question as far as, so you mentioned that you're working with Public Works about the land banking for wetland mitigations and stuff. So can you talk me through a little, I mean, I know you're not on the Public Works side, but talk me through a little bit of the process as far as funding of that goes. I mean, would that be something that would be funded out of a capital improvement plan? Is that something that we need to kind of, again, this goes back to my days on the budget committee, but, tracking, asking people for funding for this, is it in somebody's budget?
So I can just explain it how I understand it, but I think what might be good is for next time that we come back, we should bring with us somebody from Parks and Open Space to explain how this works, because they deal in it every day.
Parks or Public Works?
The Parks and Ecological Services together, so there's a couple different teams that touch it. But my understanding is that we act as a banker, we have a business plan, and so it's financially prudent for us. This is what was the work that was done, concluded that it was financially prudent for us to stay in the wetland banking business. But we act as a banker, not a financer. We would have to find through city budget process or grant funding or something else ways to actually assist developers with the costs of wetland mitigation. It's more of a service that we provide as a banker, is how I understand it. Does that make, am I right?
Yeah, I think, well, I was just going to say that all the categories of infrastructure, we're going to have to look at funding mechanisms.
Yes.
And the other thing I was going to point out is that, we've talked in the past about how to implement our visions, right? And there's three main ways. You can regulate, right? Or you can, which we would say you can require, or you can inspire, and you can also invest, right? And so I think we're going to be looking at all three of those things. And some of the things Chad showed us are kind of in the realm of inspiration, right? Like, what is the vision for this area and what possibility? What are our interests as a community? The requirement, there's already the Clear Lake, we talked about the policy, we talked about the code. There's also some other requirements that we have to work through as part of this process around the wetland mitigation, so kind of assisting with that. And then the investment part is another really interesting question. And when you look at what does development readiness mean, we'll be in the process of defining that. And so what the city's contribution might be in that situation, it's how does that work with the wetland mitigation process for the city? Is there a price per acre, which generally that's the way it works. As you say, we've got a bank here, you charge a certain price, like 50 or 60,000 an acre, whatever it is these days, I don't know. But you have those available, so it's a cost, and there's less friction about having to go find that. Or you could, there are a lot of other things the city could do around that, depending on what our approach is.
Right.
And as part of that, I mean, the city, we have to have, so right now, I think we have a couple of areas where people could purchase a few acres of wetland kind of mitigation credits, but we're going to be bumping up against like a ceiling with that real soon. So as Terry mentioned, the city is looking at buying other land to be able to kind of use as the banking spot, right? So this is something that we're going to be working with Public Works and Parks and Open Space with about getting that area ready, hopefully. So that way, as services are able to flow to the Clear Lake area, that we actually have a place that or ready for them to be able to buy these wetland credits, right? So.
Just a quick question. Terry, you mentioned that a third of the land is wetlands, but are there other compromised, lands like brownfields or anything else like that we know of, or do we just not know? And has there been any kind of?
Not that we know of. There is one site that was a former gravel pond for ODOT, construction of Beltline, and it's owned by ODOT. That piece is not part of our development portfolio because it's not privately owned. So that's the only one I know of that might have some of that history.
Commissioner Baker.
But I was just going to add on to that. Interesting question, though, around brownfields. I think brownfield remediation is part of the city's overall economic development strategies. So we've received grant funding and are working through kind of a multi-phase process to try to help property owners clean those up and get them ready for redevelopment.
Right.
Yes. But I don't think
any
of those
Yeah.
are. I don't think any of those are in that location.
These are, by and large, properties that have been farmed with industrial farming practices for probably over 100 years. And so they have the impacts of that, but not of former industrial development typically.
Mr. Baker.
Oh, since we were talking about the mitigation issue, I was wondering, would it make sense to review and see if there are any sites within Clear Lake that would be a good choice for a banking site,
Right.
given its geography and current state?
Absolutely. I mean, I think as part of the kind of wetland mitigation study, we're going to be looking at options like that. I mean, it's going to have to be a partnership, right, with Public Works. As they're going to be the agency that's literally the one procuring the land for this. So, I don't know what sort of requirements they have for the land that's needed to do wetland banking, if these meet those requirements. We're still having those conversations to see if that's a possibility. But if it does turn out to be feasible, I think we certainly include that in the wetland mitigation analysis, or ask them to consider that in that analysis so we can make recommendations based on.
I think there's a lot of potential for different functions on the parkland, but there's a caveat to creating new wetlands near the airport, which is that open water presents a bird strike hazard, and so we don't want to have create more ponds and open water near there due to FAA regulations. So they're actually hunting for a big site, a big open water site closer to Fern Ridge.
Part of the contiguous.
Yeah, Exactly. I think, and I'm not, hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn since our colleagues aren't here to talk in more detail, but I think the vision is to really create large functional complexes of high-quality wetlands. And the city actually creates through remediation and wetland strategies some of the highest quality wetlands out there. So you can bring low-quality wetlands up to a higher quality, or you can create new ones where they used to exist, but they don't exist anymore through a variety of techniques. And some of that is actually preferable to sometimes to on-site mitigation because the quality can be higher and the function can be connected with other wetland complexes. So, but we'll let them come and talk about all those details. But needless to say, the goal is to provide the most benefit. Yeah.
Commissioner Randall.
As long as we're talking about wetlands, I guess my question would be, if you have a lower quality wetland and you either bank a higher quality wetland, is it not a 1-to-1 ratio? So a higher quality wetland is worth more than a lower quality wetland? Is that how that works?
I think I would actually
Per acre?
jump, kind of add on what they said is, Public Works would be the best people to talk with that, but you did jog my memory about a conversation, because I asked the same thing you did. And there is no, I don't believe the intent is to, because of the quality, the low quality of the existing wetlands, in order to make that an actual wetland that is worthwhile, like, it's really not feasible. You know, we look at other great examples that we have in West Eugene or in Delta Ponds and things like this. We're not going to get there probably in Clear Lake. So that's why my understanding is why the water quality overlay was done on that area, right? So we're going to preserve the kind of stormwater and conveyance functions of all the water without increasing like habitat, right? Wetland habitat area. So that's why they're looking on that, for that off-site land to be able to do those wetland banking credits.
Put myself back in the queue for one other thing, and I'll move away from wetlands and I'll move to infrastructure. And I think it's important that you, again, this is a systemic conversation as far as the city goes. It's planning, it's public works, and it's finance. And so, you know, recently we had an issue with sewers in the industrial triangle. And that caused the cost of putting sewers in, and there was fees and codes that made it prohibitive, and we lost employers because of that. So I would encourage you to look at those strategies as well and say, okay, we know we're going to need to put sewers out here, and who's, you know, is the first one in going to be the guy who swallows the big pill? Is there going to be ways for that person, maybe he swallows a big pill, but he gets stuff thrown back at him as other people hook in? Look at all of those types of policies and fees and those types of things as a whole, because those are other things that are going to impact whether or not this area gets built. And we've got examples of it where it didn't work. So make sure that we look at the examples and learn from those examples so that we can make it work better going forward.
Yeah, along those lines, I'll just make a plug to be paying attention to, I think, well, someone from Public Works Engineering, maybe Mark Schoening, maybe someone else, will be talking about the zone of benefit at council here coming up this fall. And I can't recall if we had a conversation with you all about zone of benefit yet or not. But essentially, it's a strategy that that helps someone who pays for a large piece of infrastructure up front to support their development to actually recoup the investment over time as others connect to that piece of infrastructure. And we don't have that policy in place right now, at least not in the way that I think it's being envisioned. I think communities like Oswego, and there's some other communities that have done this successfully. And so what it does is it reduces the friction for someone to make that investment. You're still going to have to lay out the money, but you're able to recoup it over time. So it's just another set of options to look at. Don't know exactly when it's coming to council because the schedule hasn't been settled yet, but it's either in the fall or maybe sometime in the early winter. So, but we'll definitely be talking about that. I appreciate your interdisciplinary thinking, because that's exactly what it takes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Other comments? All right. Thank you for the presentation.
Very much.
Pleasure to meet you all.
Yes.
See you soon.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Love you guys. Thanks.
Thanks.
Welcome to the table, Chad.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, now now that Kristen's here, we will go back to our initial action item, Planning Commission elections. So just to give you a heads up, I ran through about how we didn't have a vice chair, so the normal line of continuity hasn't been changed. We put it out, and we kind of put out the fact that anybody is eligible to be nominated, and Stephen Baker expressed an interest in being chair. I also put out there that I would be willing to do it again if that was the will of the body. But at that point, this is where you walked in. So I'm going to reopen it up again, and we will have discussion about the chair position.
I served as the chair, similar to Commissioner Borowski for a year, and I'd be willing to be chair again as well.
All right.
And I'd also be willing to support someone else doing it. Yeah, either way.
I would put forward, ask for nominations. We know who's willing now.
What does that mean?
Gosh, this is like pressure.
Get ready.
Oh.
Commissioner
I'll get it
Randall.
started off.
Are you going to volunteer to be a chair also?
No, no.
He already
also-
he did it
No,
2 years.
I did a
2 years.
stand as
And you're done?
and a
You're
year. I
retired?
was a year vice chair and then 2 years as chair. So 3 years in a row is fine. So
Fine, you're done.
I'll nominate Commissioner Taylor.
I second that.
All right. Any other nominations? All right. All those in favor of Commissioner Taylor as chair?
Do I vote for myself?
Yeah.
Hopefully you're.
If you do.
Right.
We hope
I guess
so.
I should write. I am.
Okay. All right. I will continue this action item on, and then I'll pass over the gavel to you.
Oh,
So
That fast.
the second part is vice chair, or vice chair?
Vice chair. That's
Vice
correct.
chair. I was calling it co-chair, vice chair.
Vice chair, that's correct.
So now it's vice chair. Again, the position you fill in. You're part of the, sometimes there's pre-meetings to kind of set the agendas, those types of things.
I would be interested in serving as vice chair of the Planning Commission.
All right. Anybody else? I nominate Commissioner Edwards as vice chair.
Second.
Any other nominations? All those in favor? There you go.
All right.
okay.
Congratulations.
All
Thank
right.
you, everybody.
Can I borrow your, thank you.
So we are on this one, liaisons.
I apologize for my late arrival today. Okay. We're going to go to agenda item number C, letter C. It's action committees, liaisons, and project resources. So hopefully you all have a list of the current committees and who the assignments are. And if you don't, just, does everybody have one?
Yeah, we can share this one.
Okay, perfect. So I'm not sure if you talked about the best way. I think probably, Robin, what would you recommend in terms of the most effective way for us to go through this, just one by one? Are there committees that have actually changed? I suppose I'd start there.
Yeah,
New committees that staff are adding that we need to actually have new committees for?
all great questions. So preceding this, and I hope you all received this in the email, but we did a little checking amongst all the project managers, and recognizing some of these have been committees in name only, right? They've been lingering out there as we finished up the UGB adoption and so forth. So now that the projects are actually launched, we can go around and ask folks, okay, how often do you think that folks are going to meet? Those are the two questions that I was asking. What's the frequency, and what is it that you want from your planning commission folks?
Great.
And there was a little chart here that talked about project resources, and for each one of the different groups, I guess, there's an estimate of meeting frequency, which is, it's an estimate. And there's a little description of the planning commission role, so hopefully you all had a chance to take a peek at that. I can try to answer any questions you have that are, if there's anything on here that's not clear. As far as I know, everything that's on here that is not listed under future project resources is a group that we would be looking for, I think with one exception, and that is the, the University of Oregon Community Liaison. And I did put in a call to Christine Thompson, campus planner over at the university, and she was saying they haven't met for a while. There's been some discussion about what that might look like, but I don't think it's clear at this point. So that may or may not meet. And I think the other thing I wanted to point out is that the community development block grant person is actually not a planning commission position. It just so happens that Commissioner Borofsky has been serving in that role and helping CDBG figure out what to do with their grants for quite a while now.
Yeah.
Like
5, 6 years.
Yeah, so anyway, it's just on there because he happens to be on there. It doesn't mean that if he decides not to do that, that one of you has to step in and serve that role.
I already did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, he's on there too.
I'm on that committee too.
Oh, you're on the committee too? Okay, so we're double covered on the CDBG committee. Okay.
Great. Yeah.
So I think that's all I have.
So for me, again, I'm just going to kind of put out there, if you look down at the bottom, I'm on 6 committees. I'm not interested in being on all 6 committees. There are a few that I think I would like to stay on and that I've, have interest in continuing on. But the other ones, I'd be happy to drop off and let newer planning commissioners, like Robin said, some of these haven't even really started yet or haven't started in earnest. So there's time to get it running. The one that I am interested in.
Can I time you out 1 second? Because why don't we go through the list, and then when you get to it, you can opt in, opt out, and let people know. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So we can. Okay.
I just have a
Commissioner,
I have a question. Thank you. I noticed that some of them have just one name, some of them have 2, some of them actually have 3 vacancies. So I was wondering if some just need one person, others need an alternative or alternate, and then why? Like if you look at the comprehensive plan phase 2, you've got 3 spots, and so I just wasn't sure what that meant.
I don't think there's necessarily a correlation between the number of people and the need. I think it was more level, no worries, more a matter of how much interest there was on the commission to join that. More is better, but then of course some folks can't show up, and and you can't have 3 is the max, right, for quorum issues. So that's the only limitation I'm aware of.
And then the other one thing I'll just mention is there are 2 things on here that I'm already involved in, just through, for whatever reason, Housing Policy Board I attend. And so, I wouldn't know it. And then as well as the area planning for River Road, Santa Clara. That was my neighborhood until recently. And so those are both things I'd be happy and willing to be that liaison or whatever for the planning commission. But I just wanted to put that out there. But it sounds like we're going to go through them.
Yeah, we'll go through it one by one if that works. Robin, do you want to address, I just want to make sure that we're being consistent, is that if someone is serving on a committee, just making sure that if they're serving on a committee in a different capacity, is there any potential conflict of interest or any kind of issue that we have in terms of certain committees and members wearing different hats?
I guess the way I'd answer that is, in terms of conflict of interest, the conflict of interest as they're outlined in the bylaws, the planning commission bylaws, that's what we stick to. So, I mean, if you have a conflict of interest for either, I guess, a legislative or a quasi-judicial activity, you'd have to declare that one way or the other, regardless of whether you were on a subcommittee.
Yeah.
So I don't really see any special consideration around that unless someone can think of one.
I can think of one. I'm on a different committee, a matching grant committee, and I know what I do as a matter of course now, because I think it's important that people recognize I'm also on the planning commission. They're removing the perception that I'm somehow going to mix the two processes, and it came up in one particular project for a matching grant. So
I think I understand what you're saying. So
Yeah.
Okay. So more making sure that people are aware, if you're sitting on other groups, that you are a planning commissioner.
that's right.
And declaring, I would recommend declaring ahead of time whatever hat it is that you're wearing so that people are clear about that.
Yeah.
And from my experience, what I've heard folks do, I know Commissioner Borofsky do that quite a bit. And like, okay, I put my name, Commissioner Baker, here's my neighborhood hat, here's my planning commissioner hat, that sort of thing. So that's a good thing to point out.
Okay, great. Okay.
And just to that, I think, especially with Tiffany and her job, I think that which hat you're wearing, you may want to consider when you're looking at these committee things, because there's certain ones where, you may want to advocate more for your private position and not as the planning commissioner. And there's other ones where it's not as big, but if there's, votes or
Right.
those types of things, it might be
Yeah.
keep that in mind, and any of us that keep that in mind.
Yes. And if concerns do arise around conflict of interest, just get in touch with us and we'll help you work through it.
Yeah, I mean, specific to the Housing Policy Board, that's a meeting I attend as an observer. It's, it's not really, I don't have any, other than just paying attention on what they're discussing. It's not really I'm not influencing that group or anything like that, so I don't know that.
Great, are we ready? So why don't we start with Historic Review Board? Commissioner Baker currently serves on that committee.
Sure.
Liaison, so are you willing to continue, or?
Yeah, I'm willing to continue.
Does anybody else have an interest that wants to actually, I guess, throw in that interest and duke it out with Commissioner Baker? I should say it in a more collaborative way. Discuss.
I just want to say that I think Commissioner Baker's done a great job in representing the planning commission in that role. Yeah, I've always been happy to hear his updates from that.
Yeah. Okay, so if you're still on to go, and we'll leave it. The Technical Advisory Committee for Growth Monitoring, currently Commissioner Borofsky serves on that as a liaison. What are your thoughts?
Well, we voted on that the last time.
Oh, we did, you're right.
That was a voted.
That's right, sorry, that's right, sorry, that's
So-
exactly
Yeah.
right. Okay, that's.
And I have a pending application on that as well, so,
Right.
through my employer though, however, I would be representing, but.
Okay, and did we, remind me, sorry that I don't remember, the backup. Did we determine a backup?
You did not determine a backup, and you left the question open for this meeting as to whether or not you wanted to do that.
So do we want a backup?
Well, I'd be willing to be a backup when John couldn't make it, so.
Okay. Do you want votes, Robin?
Straw-polls.
Strupples, you motion?
I would say, gosh, for subcommittees, you probably don't need it unless there's a disagreement.
So let's do strupple, all those in favor? Oh,
I don't-
go ahead.
Actually, I think the bylaws say that the chair appoints people to subcommittees.
I think that it does seem like.
I'm super collaborative, I'm not going to appoint you, Commissioner Baker. So all those in favor of Commissioner Baker being the backup?
Yeah.
Okay, great,
And
thank
the
you.
only caveat to that would be, we'll have to look and see what the administrative rules and the bylaws of that committee are as far as voting members. because we don't know if a backup would be allowed. I mean, you could go and report, but you may not be able to be a voting member at it, because those haven't been written yet. The bylaws haven't been written yet.
I thought it would be more valuable that at least somebody is there,
Yeah.
because they don't meet all that often, and
Right, exactly.
Okay, you can just report back.
Yep.
Commissioner Borowski. Okay, Commissioner Borowski, he's really the liaison for all these. U of O committee liaison, currently Commissioner Borowski.
And like Robin said, I've been that position since I've been on the planning commission and have not met once in 5 years. So I don't know if that's a current position or not. And I'd be happy to give that up to
Somebody else who doesn't want to meet as well.
Does anyone else have a burning desire to be in that role? Commissioner Ramey? I'm kidding, that was kind of.
I could do that.
You probably have,
They
six.
have done that, yes.
I created its current form like 20 years ago. Yeah.
If you want to get off of something.
Oh, yeah, I'll just, the only reason I took
Your
that was
number goes to
because I was,
5 from 6, I mean.
yeah, I'll give that one away.
Okay.
Okay,
And that one might actually have some more type meetings now, with the North Campus conditional use permit and some other planning things that are going on that interact with the planning commission.
Pass along anything I find out.
There we go.
okay. So is that a yes, that you're willing
Yes.
to? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. The Community Development Block Grant, Commissioner Borowski, what is your?
I think between me and Commissioner Ramey, we've got that.
We have separate appointments for that, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's just a coincidence.
Yeah, so you,
Basically, what we do is report back to the planning commission on what's happened there. It's not like we're representing planning commission there. It's more bringing what they do at CDBG back here.
Sustainability Commission, is Commissioner Baker?
well, this is a situation where I've been standing in for the last 2 years for,
Well, actually, he's taken my position.
well, also, Nick,
Yeah,
Bree.
actually, it was, Commissioner Nicola.
when Bree couldn't make it,
prior.
then, so I've been sort of standing in, and I'd be glad to let someone else take, one of the new members if, it's definitely an interesting commission. We should both warn you that the meetings tend to be long.
They meet monthly.
They meet monthly, and
What day of the week?
it's a Wednesday from 5:30 usually to 7:30, usually, to be honest, 5:30 to 8, or sometimes even a little later. They have subcommittees, which generally, I haven't attended their subcommittee meetings, but they have a very active meeting once a month.
They're quite organized. They also have a liaison that comes to Planning Commission because they realize there's quite a bit of overlap. They actually could benefit from a planning commissioner because they're often bridging into a planning land use.
Liaison, is that right? Sue, yeah.
Yeah, very often, I think our role is to, when they get into an area that they're not that familiar with, maybe, mentioning some issues that they haven't considered that, or it's sort of giving them, you're not really part of the committee, you're just sitting in the, although actually, very often they will ask me to respond to something. So you're not really a part of the commission, but you are a liaison.
If they didn't meet on Wednesdays, I would be interested. But I often have conflicts on Wednesdays, so.
Okay. Is there anybody else that'd be willing?
I'm actually interested in the Human Rights Commission, which is a
Can do
vacancy.
both.
And it
Trust me, you can do
is
6
a
of them.
Thursday and a Wednesday, and they're back to back.
Oh. Yeah, so I don't think I will do both liaison positions.
Well, I could
but-
do sustainability, I'm interested in. Okay.
Okay. It's a very, very effective commission, so, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so all those in favor? Commissioner Ramey? Yep.
Yay.
Okay. Human Rights Commission, it is vacant, so Commissioner, and I always want to call you,
I was the liaison.
oh, you were, okay.
I stepped down because they're meeting, they're they meet on Tuesdays, and it now often conflicts with one of our Tuesday night meetings here.
That's right. So that'll just mean that
as a
you
heads up.
can't, you wouldn't be able to attend some, which has actually been kind of a challenge always.
I think so.
They meet in the same room, so they don't conflict. You
Yeah,
guys
it's
are
the
here
third
in the evening
Tuesday.
on
Third Tuesday?
what's it, the second, and they're in here on the third.
Yeah.
Oh,
I know
okay.
there was a period of time when they were meeting that,
We were meeting all the time.
when we were meeting all the time, that I never went, so.
All right.
Okay. Commissioner Fragola?
Fragola.
Okay, I always want to pronounce it differently.
Just like the strawberry.
I know. Okay, and so you're interested?
I am interested.
All those in favor? All right. Okay, Housing Policy Board, Commissioner Borofsky.
No.
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 Okay, great. We need, okay, perfect.
we
Commissioner
go.
Evans, all those in favor?
Hey.
Yay. Edwards, sorry, see, great. Okay, corridor, we'll move to the next, project resources, corridor planning moving ahead. Currently, we have Commissioner Randall, and then we have 2 vacancies if we want to fill it at 3. I mean, obviously, we don't have to. And then
I would like
alternate
to
is
stay
Baker.
on that committee.
You would like to
I
stay?
would like to stay.
There is some benefit to
I have a
continuity.
report later from our
Yes.
last meeting if.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there is some benefit to continuity. So if we can maintain one person, it's actually helpful.
If there's room for more, because I know Commissioner Jaworski was the other person,
Even
and then
before that, it was
Commissioner
Mills
Baker
and me early on.
Yeah.
And I've been, the alternate has been going a lot because other people haven't come, so I'm comfortable doing that.
Okay,
Continuing on that
so
road.
we'll move Commissioner Baker onto that committee. Is there anybody else that's interested in moving ahead? Okay,
How often do they meet? What is
But it
it?
says
Looks like-
twice a year, so I'm just.
No.
We met June 11th
More
was our
frequently
last
than that.
meeting. I think there was one in May, and then we're meeting again the end of this month.
Okay.
But the,
Done by mid-next year.
It'll be done by mid-next year. It's just a sounding board. And since I go off the end of June next year, I'd like to stay on through the end about the same time.
Who says you can go off?
Randy Ledick.
Oh, you're going over to Lane County.
So I have Commissioner Randall and Commissioner Baker. So has anybody changed their mind, want to be part of the committee?
Do you want to do it too, Chris?
I'm looking ahead at some of these other, let's see how this rest of this goes.
Okay, you can always jump back. Yeah, we can.
I'm interested, but I don't.
Okay. Is there anybody that wants to be an alternate? Okay, we'll come back to that one in case Commissioner Ramey has, depending on what happens. Okay, the next one, Urban Reserve
Did
Plan.
y'all said.
Yep, sorry,
Baker-
all
Baker's
those,
on.
all those in favor of Randall and Baker. We've got 2. Thank you. Urban Reserve Planning, currently there's Commissioner Borofsky and Randall. There are 2 alternates, me and Commissioner Baker. Borofsky and Randall, what are your thoughts?
Stay on it.
Stay on it?
Yeah, I think I will stay on because of the monitor, or the technical
Technical
advisory
advisory?
committee. And their first year is going to be kind of concentrated on urban reserve, so I might stay on that one.
Okay, and there's a vacancy. Is anybody interested? Okay, Commissioner Edwards. And you're saying, Commissioner Baker, you're interested as well?
yeah, I was interested, because that's why I
Okay.
was on the interest list.
Okay, so we've got Edwards and Baker. So we need one person to be an alternate over
Are
the,
you not wanting to be an alternate then?
I don't need to be an alternate, no. I can, since there's 2 interested people, I can move from being the alternate. Yes.
Would-
Serve, there's no limit. That's not a formal committee, so there can be 3.
Yeah, we already, we're at 4.
We're doing the 3 right now.
Should
So-
we, yeah,
So,
Commissioner,
My suggestion would be to have Commissioner Baker and then Commissioner Edwards as the alternate, since he had already expressed interest, just as a thought.
that
and since
work?
the next one is River Road.
okay?
What is that? Why would that be? What do you mean?
Well, I'm just looking.
Oh, the next
We
one
have
in-
vacancies on
In
River
the,
Road.
where, yeah.
The next ones, yeah.
So does that sound like a reasonable approach? Okay, so I have Commissioner Borofsky, Randall, and Baker on the committee. Commissioner Edward is the alternate.
Okay.
Okay, So all those in favor? Okay. Area planning, River Road, Santa Clara, neighborhood plan and corridor study. We have 2 vacancies.
Here for that, one of those.
Okay, and are you willing to be the representative of the planning commission as
Absolutely,
well?
yes.
Okay, great.
There in my.
And Commissioner Fregala, okay. So all those in favor? Commissioner Edwards and Commissioner Fregala, okay, you got it? Comprehensive Plan Phase 2, parcel-specific land use diagram, we have Baker, Borowski. Did I skip one?
Yeah.
Sorry, oh, there we go, sorry about that. Comprehensive Plan Phase 2, remaining chapters, Taylor, and 2 vacancies. I can remain on that. 2 other vacancies, is there anybody else that wants to be on it?
Question for staff. What do you think is that going to make it this year as far as staff time? I mean,
Yeah, it just may not kick off until the new year,
okay,
but this fiscal year,
Yeah.
there will be a need.
okay,
Yeah, we haven't put it on hold.
right, okay. Again, I'm just.
Anybody else? I want to do it solo?
No, I mean, what's the next one?
The next one is, and I can have staff, Terry can talk about this, or Robin in particular. I could too, but comprehensive plan, phase 2, the parcel-specific land use documents. So they're both components of the phase 2. So that's Baker, Borowski, and Taylor. For continuity, I would love to stay on that. I'm also willing if somebody's super motivated.
I could switch out of that one and go up to phase 2 of the remaining chapters if Commissioner Ramey wants to jump into.
No, I just want to know what.
Yeah, I'll have Terry or Robin, you want to
I
describe it?
can tell you a little bit about it. So comp plan, the parcel-specific land use diagram basically goes back to the, so our land use designations as part of the metro plan are actually recorded on an 11 by 17 map.
Bubble diagram,
Yeah.
blob, yeah.
Yeah, it's old technology basically, and so when you blow up one of the lines, yeah, so it creates some challenges because there's disagreements about what the designation is for specific properties, and the idea would be to translate that into an actual digital map.
So the work is really to compare the blob to the property line and say, yeah, it is or it isn't right.
Yeah, that's a very simplified version of it. There will be technical analysis. There'll be a lot of outreach for people who have opinions one way or the other. It'll be a pretty big challenge actually, but it is mainly a technical and political exercise.
And what's the timeline on that one?
Yeah, I think we've already begun the analysis on that one. The idea is that with the remaining chapters that that we didn't adopt in the last round, that those would move forward for adoption in conjunction with a new land use diagram, so they could be adopted as a package. But the constituencies, the discussion for each of those before they merge into that adoption package will be different. So.
Commissioner Ramey, any,
I'm interested in either of those.
okay?
Well, actually, all of the next 3 I'm interested in, so I don't, however it fits with what we're doing here.
Okay, so there are 2 vacancies in the first comprehensive plan, phase 2. In terms of phase 2 parcel-specific land use document, land use diagram, we've got Baker, Borowski, Taylor. It sounds like Baker, do you want to stay?
Yeah, I'm fine with
I'll drop out of.
And you can drop out.
because we've already had a few meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's early on enough that I think anybody can jump into it
Right.
and get up to speed really quickly. So
Yeah.
I can drop out of parcel specific.
So,
Remaining chapters.
Commissioner Ramey, between those 2, or do you want me to go to the next one so you can?
Yeah, well, I want to hear who's interested in the next one.
Okay, code improvement, clear and objective, needed housing standards, Randall, and there's a vacancy. So we have Commissioner Edwards, and I suppose we could have 3 there. There's no reason, okay. So we have Edwards, we have Baker, and potentially Ramey. So does that give you the information? Commissioner Ramey?
So Randall's dropping out of that one?
No, I'd like to stay on this.
Yeah, so
already
sorry,
have
we
3
need
there.
to, exactly.
Right. So, tough.
So the remaining chapters, there's 2 vacancies. The parcel specific, it sounds like there's 1 vacancy. Code improvement, 2 vacancy, but there's 3 potential interested.
Yeah, I'll definitely move back up to comprehensive plan phase 2. I can do both of those, or I can do either of them, whatever.
Should you go for both? I'm not going to encourage you, though, you do what you want.
Question on the code improvement one, it says working group sessions September and then 4 to 6 in the parentheses. Is that 4 to 6 working group sessions during September? Okay. I'm on vacation 2 weeks in the middle of September, just.
That's clear and objective, is that what the one that you said?
Yes, on clear and objective.
Yeah, well, it's good. We'll have 3 positions then. We have ample people.
Yeah, it's on a short timeline, so I think it's like a lot of activity in a small window.
And if that presents, if you think that it's better off that maybe Commissioner Randall, because of the absence, goes to alternate, staff, what are your?
Yeah, if that would pose a problem, I'd be interested in the land use diagram, but if we've already got people there, that's fine too.
Different timelines.
Yeah. But if you think me being gone a couple of weeks, the middle of September will hurt that on clear and objective, I'd be happy to.
I think that that's going to vary. Lots of people are going to be gone for 1 or more of the meetings.
Okay.
And we'd be happy to have you when you're here.
Okay, so Commissioner Ramey, are you both comp plan too?
I can do both, or I can do, it just depends on how the other names fall out here, how many.
Sounds like there's no one else for remaining chapters. It's just me.
No, I want to be on that.
Oh, you do?
Well,
Great.
yeah, I said I would drop out of parcel
And move up.
specific and move up.
Okay,
But we
great.
got room for 3
There's
there,
still another one.
so I'll take
So
that.
basically, it's up to you, Commissioner Ramey. You're the only other person I'm hearing express an interest.
So put me down for both then.
Okay, great. So all those in favor of Taylor, Borofsky, and Ramey for the remaining chapters of Comp Plan 2? Okay, for Comp Plan 2 parcel specific, I've got Baker, Ramey, and Taylor. All those in favor? Okay. And now we're on this last one. So Commissioner Ramey, does that mean you want to move to an alternate for that?
On the code improvement?
Uh-huh.
Sure. I don't think it's likely that I'll be needed, but
Okay.
it looks good on my resume.
Yeah, right. Good. I'm glad you're still
Yeah, we
building that
want to be with
resume.
6.
So code improvement, clear and objective, I have Randall, Edwards, and Baker. Alternate, Ramey. Is that right? Am I capturing that right? Okay, all those in favor? You never know, actually. You might, especially really active subcommittees, oftentimes the alternates will be pulled up. Future project resources, area planning, university neighborhood plan, Baker, Borofsky, a vacancy, and I'm an alternate.
And that's a TB.
And that's yeah.
That actually has just kind of started. They're just doing a little bit of outreach right now, but I'll stay on that one.
I like to stay on that one too.
Okay, I'm willing to serve on that one. Okay. So that's Baker, Taylor, Borofsky, all those in favor? And, maybe we won't even meet the next year and we'll be here again, voting on it. Area planning, Bethel neighborhood plan, not applicable now, right? So I'm not addressing it? Is that what NA?
Yeah, there isn't, it's too far out to know right now.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Any questions? Any last minute reconsiderations, like you're dying to be on one of these committees?
I have a question.
Yes.
What's do we need to do the outreach to let them know, hey, as far as, I don't know, how do we normally need to
It's a good question.
That is a good question. I think for all the committees that are staffed by planning, I'm going to send around an updated list based on everything we've talked about here. Give you all a chance to say, oh, wait, no, you made a mistake or something, or hey, that looks great. And then we'll just share that with all the staff and they will know to reach out to whoever is on the subcommittee. Okay. For the other ones, Yeah, I think it would probably be best if we were to share with you the contact information for whoever staffs the committee, and we can just tell them who it is, and then also give you contact information for them. That way you both have each other's contact info and can go from there.
Yeah, I just figured it'd be the best way to find out, when the meetings are happening, and, because some of them haven't really
Yeah.
been scheduled, and so it'd be helpful to know. Would hate to miss an email there somewhere.
Yep.
Great. Okay.
Let's see here. Go back to this one was, where did it go? Well, that was it. Now it's committee and in items from committee and staff.
Items from various committees and staff. Why don't we start with Planning Commission committees? Are there any reports? Yeah, Commissioner Randall.
Moving Ahead met June 11th, the sounding board. And just to kind of summarize, I don't know how many reports we've actually had from Moving Ahead because it's been kind of sporadic, but the idea is to look at it's the technical work that evaluates the 5 key transit corridors, Highway 99, River Road, 30th to LCC, Coburg Road, and MLK Junior Boulevard. And they take each of those corridors, look at the 3 alternatives, which is the no build, an enhanced corridor, which is the frequent transit, but not the MX. And then the third option is the MX. And they're looking at ways to combine all of those alternatives. Maybe you do an MX here and an enhanced corridor here and a no build there, and trying to put all that together in a way that makes the most sense. I guess the benefit to it is doing all of the environmental studies in that on all the corridors all at once and not having to do them individually. But the challenge has come on how to communicate that and those options to the public. And in our last meeting, they had different charts, and it got kind of busy and confusing real quick. And so they're going back and looking at ways to make that a little clearer before they go to the public. The idea was to get out to the public actually just about now, but they're pushing that back a little bit just so that they can clarify some of the infographics that they felt might be a little confusing. And so that's kind of where that's at. We have a meeting the end of August. I think the 29th is our next meeting. And so, Commissioner Baker. So that'll be the 29th at the next step if you haven't got that yet. And then I'll throw in one added comment. The Register Guard recently reported on the ridership for the West Eugene MX, and it has been averaging about 110,000 boardings a month. Franklin Boulevard runs about 150 to 180. And the West Eugene has already outpaced the Gateway by almost double. So
And is that in line with what they anticipated or more than they anticipated?
I don't think the Register Guard really said, but it seemed like it was more than what they anticipated. It's kind of like the bike share. I think that's more than what they anticipated. So that's a different topic. But.
This is more maybe a question for staff, but if Moving Ahead has talked about it, could we maybe be a platform for them to practice what it would be like to come to the public? We haven't heard from Moving Ahead in a long time. And actually, as a planning commissioner, I get questions about Moving Ahead. So I don't know if...
I will pose that.
And so it's obviously part of our agenda too, and how that fits in, if it's relevant or when it's relevant.
Just to add a comment too, one of the issues was that they had sort of concentrated their public involvement for the summer, or more toward the summer rather than when students weren't around. And there was some concern about sort of extending their public involvement period so that there would be a way for students who aren't here in August and mostly September could still be aware of this and comment on the program. So they say one of the other reasons that they're pushing things is they're revising their public involvement schedule a bit and how they handle that to make it better able for students and people that are not around in the summer to participate. I mean, sometimes people go away in the summer if they're teachers or whatever. So that's another thing that was.
Okay, great. Commissioner Baker, do you have a report? I noticed your hand was up. For another committee?
Oh, no, I was commenting on that.
So you didn't-
I also will comment on, there's a historic review board meeting, I believe it's next Thursday, it's an emergency meeting. We met, the last meeting was, Historic Review Board had a revolving loan fund established 20 years ago or 20, probably originally seeded with CDB grant funds, and it's been sitting in the bank and growing. And so a while back, we made a decision that we would take the interest from that couple $100,000 and make it available as, that was a loan program, a revolving loan, make it available as small grants for historic preservation projects. And so the last meeting was reviewing several projects. All three of them received a modest amount of funds. Because again, we're talking about $10,000 a year, and I gave some of them away earlier in the year. So the three projects received additional funds. One was the Wow Hall for some improving the windows are 100 years old, and they're trying to preserve the historic character, and a couple of other individual buildings that have that are registered and have historic significance and needed some funding for some like roof repairs or some small things. So I just wanted to mention that.
Okay.
So there is a small grant program for historic preservation.
Great. Is that all from the commission? Move to staff.
I was just going to mention the Sustainability Commission has been spending a lot of time on their climate, their large climate action plan. And the last meeting focused a lot on what they called their, I didn't bring my notes with me, large level. Yeah, large level stakeholders. And so there was a discussion of trying to expand that group, because the way it is now, it pretty much was government organizations. And there was a feeling that it should include some other organizations. So anyway, but they're plowing ahead with a new version of that plan. I assume it'll be out sometime later this fall. They've been having subcommittee meetings regarding that. So a couple other things I should comment on. They've had a long-standing review and discussions of trying to get the city of Eugene, when it awards contracts, like say for banking services and other services, to have a sort of an environmental evaluation as part of that in terms of making decisions, if one firm is better in some regard. So that's coming to a head, because I think they have made some changes to the way they're evaluating it, and the first big example of that would be the banking contract, which has been with U.S. Bank, but we'll see what happens. That will be awarded. There'll be a new banking contract that, I don't know if it's 4 years or something, that will be awarded sometime this fall. So they have done quite a bit of work on that. There are lots of other things that they're working on. There's a lot of comments about the animal feeding or whatever.
So the turkeys.
Well, turkeys and, yeah, whatever. So, and there are other projects that are sort of small house project and ADAs. But the main thing right now has been the climate action plan.
Okay. Staff report.
Sure. First of all, I'd just like to put out there that staff in the big picture is looking at the upcoming schedule for council. And generally, they like to schedule up through the end of the calendar year. And there's a lot going on. So this is actually, in my experience, the earliest that there's been a crowded schedule for council at this time of year before the end of the year that I've seen. So it just seems like there's a lot of different issues. There's a lot of initiatives looking for bandwidth, and I just wanted to put that out there. We don't have a preliminary schedule yet. I don't know exactly when it will be available. When I do get that, if there's any issues or implications for work that's coming up for Planning Commission, I'll definitely let you know about that as soon as I can. Also, talking about council, there was a work session, I'm going to say it was about a month and a half ago, on C2 zoning, and it was a work session request that Councilor Taylor had put out there. And in sort of unpacking the series of questions, I think it was mainly around the transition between C2 zoning and the adjacent R1 zoning. And this is something that Planning Commission, for the new folks, is actually something that Planning Commission has been talking about for several years. And in fact, I think at the bottom of the work plan, in items that we don't have room for yet, it was there. So it was brought up and discussed at council. We actually had mentioned, yeah, in fact, that's something that you all had brought up and discussed. So there may be some synergy around that. And interestingly, it's related to a question that Councilor Zelenka had brought up, which is about setbacks for commercial zones in the downtown, and looking at, for example, the frontage of Capstone along West 11th is just kind of a big blank wall with no trees or anything. And the question came up, well, what can we do about that? So we don't know what's going to come out of this. I think what we said, what the city manager said is we'll come back for another discussion on that, but it's probably not going to be before the end of the year because we have a lot of other things going on. But I just wanted to let you all know that, and that conversation's happening. Yeah.
And I recall in that work session that council had that they really were looking for the process with River Road and Santa Clara's neighborhood plan to kind of inform them, because I think that's really where that all primarily is located.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's exactly right. And we were sort of pointing the direction in, well, rather than launching a citywide discussion, why don't we first explore these questions in the context of work that's already funded, that's already underway. Certainly that situation of the C2 next to R1 exists all over in the Santa Clara area, and it's actually a really similar condition to what we find in other corridors. So we'll unpack that question. And along those lines, I think coming up here pretty soon, we have the FTA-funded transit corridor study that's happening in conjunction with River Road Santa Clara Neighborhood Plan. And that's significant. And there will be some really interesting studies and work coming out of that very soon. Maybe, very soon, meaning within the next half a year. That's very soon for planning timeline.
It is, before you know it.
Right, it is. It's kind of before you know it. So there's those items in terms of Planning Commission schedule. We have likely some public hearings and deliberations coming up for an appeal of the Lombard project, and that will likely consume the majority of your September schedule. We have another meeting. We have a meeting coming up on August 27th, where we're going to look at the approving the public involvement plan for the comp plan phase 2 work. And then also an update on what I was just mentioning, which is the River Road Santa Clara neighborhood planning update, as well as the transit corridor plan. So look forward to that in a couple of weeks. After September, on October 9th, we have tentatively scheduled a fair housing training. So Louise Dix, who works for the Fair Housing of Oregon, a nonprofit that basically advocates for education around fair housing law and what that means for different folks. And so she'll be here. She does presentations for planning commissions around the state. And so she did one for staff. And I don't remember if any of you were able to attend that one or not, or if it was primarily staff, I think, who might have been there. It was very interesting. So I think in the context of all the housing discussions that are happening, it will be really interesting for you too. So I think that'll be about an hour on October 9th. And looking beyond that, I think the next most urgent thing, urgent business item for Planning Commission will probably be clear and objective housing standards, since it's on a pretty tight timeline, and we're going to have to get that on the books for you guys too.
So can I ask a quick question about the hearing dates? I know that there's tentative scheduled dates. Are those the dates that you're actually targeting that fit within the codified timeline? So is that what we should basically put on our calendars?
Yeah, are you referring to September 5th and September 6th
hold
for
for
Lombard
possible, yeah.
public hearings, possible deliberation? Yes. Yes. And this, for the new folks, this comes up that sometimes we have to squeeze meetings in to meet the legal deadlines for being responsive to land use applications for the 120 days run out. So we're going to do that and hope for the best. Hopefully that'll be enough time for deliberations.
So Commissioner Edwards, anyways, I'll go there in a minute. Is that all, Commissioner Brodsky? Looks.
That's all I've got unless you have questions, yeah.
Yes.
I was just going to give a little bit of an update on a couple of actions that went to council that were before us, and our recommendations went to council. We had the Gordon Hotel, the height limitation, the sign code, and also the 1,000-foot buffer on the marijuana that we had public hearings and make recommendations. The council followed our recommendation on the 1,000-foot buffer, followed our recommendation on the height limit, didn't follow our recommendation on the sign code. They went ahead and approved the sign code for the Gordon Hotel. The Planning Commission voted not to recommend that, so.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you.
I was just going
Commissioner Baker?
to add that the city manager recommended both of them, both the extensions, and that's the way they appeared to have voted, so.
Yeah, that's correct.
Any other? Yeah, Commissioner Ramey.
So circling all the way back to setbacks for C2 or commercial, the Walnut Station did that. We tried to.
Tried to do what?
C2 next to R1 or.
Oh, yeah, I looked at the transition. Absolutely. Yeah.
There's some precedent, I don't know
Yeah.
if it's precedent, but there's some example of having
Yeah.
done that.
Yeah, for sure. Sort of
It's been built any. Well, maybe that.
Oh, yeah.
I think
That
so.
one built.
They have.
Yeah,
They're
the new one on Wagonuts.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a good
Yeah.
thing to look at and go, did that work? Did that do what we wanted it to do?
It's a really good point. So looking at where it's been tested and see what the results have been. Yeah, the hybrid form-based code approach to that transition is, we also took a run at that with South Willamette, as you guys recall. And that information is still out there. My guess is River Road Santa Clara will take yet another run at that. So good call.
Yeah, thank you. Any of the other questions? Yeah, Commissioner Fraggle.
In terms of scheduling, I just received an invitation to a city service, I forget what the entire, October 1st, City Service Academy. And that had the information of where to register, but I was also wondering about the commissioner training that you sent the email about. That's part of the conference. So if we want to attend that, do we just let you know, or?
I would say go ahead and close the loop with Darren. So
Okay.
I think he's the one who sent out the invitation. He'll coordinate all that for you guys. And if you want to sign up and do it, go for it. And
Highly recommended.
Okay, great.
And just one other note, as far,
I was just going to make another plug. And in fact, I would encourage all of you strongly to go to that, especially the new folks. I
To
think it will
both,
be very
both of them, or
yes,
Which one?
absolutely. Yeah.
As far as the hearings and appeal, it looks like there's one date where there's going to be 3 of us that are known to be absent. So the other 4,
No.
you guys got to go.
Which date
Okay,
is that?
Yeah,
That's the September 11th.
September 11th.
That's the tentative one. Both Commissioner Randall
third one?
and I are, yeah, that's the 3rd one. But-
So we'll verify.
Gone? I'm gone that day.
Right, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Oh, is that what?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah, Borowski,
Yeah.
Randall, and Edwards are gone, so we definitely had to kind of address this very critically when we were down commissioners, so we'll definitely address that in the prior meeting to verify that everybody can make it.
I have all 3 on my calendar.
Great, yeah, so, obviously if somebody becomes sick or something, we'll have to figure it out. Commissioner Baker?
No, I was going to say that my plans for that part of September aren't completely gelled, so I'm
You might
a
be,
little concerned,
okay.
that there were only 4 people that were potentially available for that meeting.
Yeah. So yeah, put those on your calendar, those 4 that are remaining.
Got it.
So Commissioner Edwards, I just wanted to let you know, I am not here the next meeting. So you'll be jumping
Note to
right
reach out.
in. So staff will reach out to you and you'll have a pre-meeting and they'll go over it with you.
And we'll be there for you too.
I'll sit on.
That's right.
I'll-
And you've got Randall and Borowski there and somebody can sit right beside you. Exactly. No worries.
You get a script and everything.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
I had a couple of
Yes.
other pieces of information for you on a couple of projects. One being moving ahead, there are dates for community meetings that are already out there on the website, and I'll ask the project management team if they can come give you a short update or point you to the website or something, because you're already scheduled for your meeting on September 24th for a couple of items that otherwise would be really good timing.
Those are the updated dates, Terry?
The updated dates are September 24th through the 26th. It's that week, Monday through Thursday, in a different corridor each night. And so there may be one that you're interested in attending, or as a member of the public or as a planning commissioner who's on the sounding board. Sounding board is meeting, as you said, August 29th, so you'll get a fuller update at that time. The other update I was going to give you is about the housing tools and strategies process. So Ann Fifield is invited to come give you an update at your September 24th meeting. And she's the project manager for the city, implementing some direction that we received from council on May 30th around removing barriers to housing and convening a community conversation about what that looks like. So I'm on that interdisciplinary, interdepartmental team supporting Anne. And I can give you more details, but truth is they're all being ironed out right now. So there'll be a lot more to come, and by September there will be a good amount to report.
Okay, great. Great. Any questions? No? Okay. Well, that is all that's on the agenda. And unless, I'm sorry, I don't know if you're a new staff member, but if you're from the public, do you have any feedback? for us?
Ariana, she's our
You've
public
been really
outreach
patient, and if
intern.
you have something to tell us.
No, I'm the outreach intern for the planning division.
Great.
So-
Okay.
So I came to learn and feel the experience.
All right. I hope the feeling was good. Okay. Great. Okay, that we're adjourned for this evening. Thanks.